This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
Welcome to the program. Joining me now, John Brummett, columnist with the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. We had a week off from visiting with each other, so it's good to catch up with you again, sir.
Yes, missed doing it last week. Glad to be back.
Yes. Over the course of the last few days, we have learned of the passing of Meredith Oakley, who was a longtime columnist with the Arkansas Democrat. She also, once the merger was complete, oversaw the Voices page there for many years. She kind of died somewhat suddenly. I don't think anybody was expecting this. You worked against her and with her. So tell me a little bit about Meredith Oakley and just kind of what her legacy is.
Here's one thing I'll tell you to start, and it's a context I think she would insist on. She would want me to begin any comments I make about her by making clear the context that she didn't like me, and kind of vice versa. This newspaper war of the 80s was bitter, it was personal, and there were raw emotional feelings, and that applied to our personal relationship. But when the newspaper war ended and I took a path through the Arkansas Times that wound up with my being a columnist for the surviving Democrat-Gazette, my column was edited by Meredith Oakley, whose office was nearby. And we worked well together. Never an issue between us for a decade that I can recall about anything that I wrote. There was no pretense that we were going to go out and have a drink after, and nobody was interested in that. But competent, that's nearly the first word I would use to say about her. The prevailing word in a statement I gave the paper, and 7 or 8 other people used the word in reference to remembering her life, was fierce. She was fierce. She was strong. She was no nonsense. She was dedicated fully to what she was dedicated to, be it protection of the FOI or a special number. She was a talented singer in the Farkleberry Follies, to loyalty to the Democrat, to her benefactor, John Robert Starr, and disdain for those she was competing with. But she was a force. I saw that Skip Rutherford told the paper he wasn't sure the Democrat would have won the war over the Gazette without Starr and Oakley. And I have to tell you, her column was significant enough in the newspaper war for the Democrat that it was largely responsible, not totally, but largely responsible for the Gazette higher-ups deciding we got to have somebody locally who can, spar in terms of opinion and attitude in a column, answering her, I think, to some measure. And that's how I became a columnist in February of 1986. So a significant person in my life, a significant person, particularly through the 80s and 90s, and the first decade of this century in Arkansas journalism.
Fierce and competent, 2 words that will definitely
those are the first two.
All right. Thank you for sharing on that.
Sure.
Let's talk about what is happening on the presidential front. I'm going to start with our former governor, Asa Hutchinson. Was booed off the stage at CPAC, seems to be struggling, doesn't seem anywhere near the 40,000 donors that are going to be needed to make the stage in the first Republican debate. But he seems undeterred if you listen to his words here, but kind of assess how much longer of a long shot you think Asa Hutchinson is today versus where he was maybe when he got in the race and the field was not as crowded.
I remember when I interviewed him for your annual magazine early this year, and he was telling me with some excitement and sharing privately some emails he'd gotten from religious evangelical groups in Iowa. He thought he could compete there. He seemed to have some enthusiasm about it. At the very least, these emails he was showing me, indicated that there was some animus or some withdrawal from Trump support among Iowa evangelicals, and he thought he could go do that. I asked him immediately, what about vetoing the the youth trans ban on treatment. What about vetoing that? And the evangelical right reaction. And he said, he's kind of shrugged it off. I've got a defense. The reason I vetoed the bill was to support parental rights, and there's nothing more conservatively fundamental than that. I knew better. I'm sure he had to sort of know better. But the day before he got booed down in South Florida, Tucker Carlson kind of destroyed him, I thought, by saying, you keep referring to treatment and defending it as treatment, so you believe in changing your gender, don't you? And everybody cheered Tucker Carlson. And then later, Tucker Carlson asked Asa how many COVID vaccines he took, and Asa said, how many did you take? Which teed it up for Tucker Carlson to say 0, which the crowd applauded. When you're being interviewed by a talking head, who's popular in that group, and the only cheers are for the questions or the retorts to your answers, you've had a bad day. And I think that issue harms him, and I think his position as the anti-Trump has been taken by Chris Christie, who's more flamboyant. So then he goes down to Florida. He didn't get booed. Well, that may just maybe an expression, an idiom. He didn't get booed off the stage. He got booed and he kept talking through it. But these were basically young people. It was in South Florida. It was a Trump group, and we know Trump, the Trump base is boorish and doesn't necessarily behave well. And it didn't toward him. That he came out of that saying, I think I'm going to get some support out of this, because he was getting some higher profile. I think maybe that's oddly so, but he's languishing around 1%, and his poll performance is less a factor right now than the individual donors. He is 34,000 short. Christie claims already to have gotten 40,000 individual donors. It's symptomatic. Raising money, the ability to raise money from individuals is a key sign of how political stout you are. And if he can't, and his only hope would be to get on the debate stage and distinguish himself. He could make some difference there. But right now it's an outside shot. I wrote a column saying, come on home, take care of the grandkids, have some gossipy lunches with some political moderates, and enjoy your life, play some horseshoes, play some basketball. I think he believes still that he can do well enough in Iowa to make his way south and do where maybe the landscape helps him. I kind of hope he's not in the race by the time he gets to Arkansas. I'd hate to see the recent former governor of the state finish last in his Republican primary in Arkansas, but I think the Arkansas Republican Party has long since left his brand of moderation. I think he's in big trouble. Well, he has been in big trouble. He stays there, and I don't think he's in for much of a haul, much less a long haul in this race.
Well, he was a long shot to begin with, so
right.
Still a long
That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah. All right. We have learned via former President Donald Trump that he is going to be indicted a third time, I believe. I'm kind of losing count at this point, but this is the Jack Smith investigation.
Right.
Apparently, he is going to be charged with criminal indictment related to the January 6th riots on the U.S. Capitol there. Is this the straw that breaks the camel's back, or do you think this makes Donald Trump even more resilient and more popular with Republican voters? This one seems to be a little bit of a different animal to me because of the nature of the circumstances that are going to bring these charges.
I think as long as it is an indictment, it serves Trump's narrative, and it serves to fortify that base, which is enough to win Republican primaries with pluralities, not outright majorities of the vote. The idea that the Democrats are politically motivated and piling on this man who managed to give us the Supreme Court that's changed the world in our favor, the idea that he tried to build a wall and they wouldn't let him, all that kind of thing. The indictment, just in it, the fact of yet another indictment, even though this one they've been in ascending order of seriousness from the New York State Court to the documents. Now to this one that is forthcoming. But I don't think the political effect changes until he's convicted, and he's working hard, if he is indeed to be convicted. And his political strategy is his legal strategy. Let's draw this thing out so long that I get elected anyway, that it helps me politically, that I might get elected, and then I can pardon myself, or I can remake the Justice Department, and they can drop anything that's pending. I think that's all part of his legal / political essence. Right now, I think you do a poll right now, he's going to be 50% still, way out in front of the Republicans. What's happening in the Republican primary is DeSantis is slipping and Tim Scott's moving up. And Asa is above 1% in one. But I just, that's a different subject. I just don't, I think yet more. This just solidifies the dynamic as it is now in place. But it is a very fluid thing, because when there is an indictment, there will be presumably an eventual resolution, a verdict. And I think whenever we get it, and whatever it is, that's what will affect. And what I'm saying is, if he gets convicted, surely the Republicans will start looking for somebody else, even a significant number in that base. And that may be false, but that's how I read that.
I just need a little bit more historical context on this. I mean, I've been around politics for 30 years. You've been around politics longer than that.
Don't say how long.
I didn't, but 31 plus.
Yeah.
But I mean, a criminal indictment of a sitting politician is usually the end of a political career. I mean, it just amazes me that this is just, floating off.
It shows just how malignant our politics and how it's metastasizing, and it's been happening even without Trump for years, but it has been accelerated by his whole persona, and the established order of things. That horrible word in a headline for a politician, indicted. I remember a local columnist did a piece once about Jim Guy Tucker coming into a restaurant up in the Heights and said he just looked at him and thought, indicted man, that it was just a pall, that was the destruction of this gentleman, meaning former Governor Tucker, who was at that time indicted. But now it's different. It's different, at least for Trump, because he has defined himself as all about resentment, grievance, politics. And when you have managed to define yourself as that, then when you get indicted one more time, it's like, see, we've got a grievance. We resent this, quote, deep state, or the liberals in Washington, or the Democrats weaponizing our Justice Department, none of which, when you look at the whole picture, holds up. But that's why, sadly, and very worryingly, an indictment is now a political advantage for a person. Yes, that's where we are.
I don't know.
At least this person.
At least
go ahead.
Yes. True. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. He is John Brummett. He's a columnist with the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Always good to visit with you. Thank you for your insights.
Roby, I'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.